Okay, everyone. Here's our skill sheet for our day 2 of e-learning. We're going to talk about the digestive system. So last class we talked about food. Now what happens to that food once it gets inside of us? So why don't you pause the video, download the skill sheet, and read it on your own for a second. And if you can't print this out, don't worry about printing these out. You just look on the computer though while we're writing this down. And you can write this information down in your journal. So print this out and go through the reading section. Okay, so now we've read it. Now let's read it together and listen. When we eat food, we take in large chemicals found in the food, such as carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, such as fats. The digestive system then breaks down and absorbs these chemicals. That's the overall function of the digestive system. It breaks down and absorbs. Food enters the mouth, is pushed down through the esophagus and into the stomach. Food is then pushed into and through the small intestine and the large intestine. Notice I keep using this word pushed. Muscles make up the esophagus and the stomach and these intestines. They're surrounding these. And the muscles help push the food through the digestive system. There are also other structures in the body that help the digestive system, even though food does not travel through them. These are the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. Finally, food ends up in the rectum as it waits to be expelled. To break down food, the digestive system uses both movement and chemicals. We call the movements physical digestion, and we call these chemicals chemical digestion. For instance, teeth grind food particles down into smaller pieces, and the stomach mixes up food. These are just movements. The mouth, stomach, liver, pancreas, and small intestine also secrete. Secrete means to give off. So again, secrete means to give off or to send out chemicals and enzymes to help break down food. Okay, now let's go down to over to the listening section of the notes, and let's talk about the functions of these systems. So the mouth. What the mouth does is it breaks down food both physically and chemically. So it breaks down food chemically and physically. So really what's going on here is we are grinding food down. So we are grind, and chemicals are being used to break down the food. If you have ever put some foods in your mouth, you might notice that they start dissolving right away, and that's because some of the chemicals found in our saliva or our spit can break certain foods apart. Things like sugars. Okay, next, our esophagus. The esophagus no digestion occurs in the esophagus. It is just a tube that connects the mouth to the stomach or the throat to the stomach. Now, in the esophagus, I want to first mention this word of pushing. The esophagus pushes food. Now, in the digestive system, the process where food is pushed through the system, we call it peristalsis. So the esophagus pushes food, but we call that peristalsis. So it just pushes food down. Now food arrives in the stomach as this little clump of mess. So we've chewed the food down and it was broken down a little bit in our mouth. The stomach is now going to secrete hydrochloric acid. So the stomach makes acid and sends it out into its chamber to start dissolving the food even more. This is going to really work on proteins a lot. So the stomach makes HCl, and the stomach is also going to move around, kind of like a washing machine, to stir up and mix that food. So the stomach makes HCl, hydrochloric acid. Isn't that weird that our stomach can make acid? And it mixes the food up. The food's becoming even more of a mess. Look at what we're really doing here is breaking food down. Next, the stomach pushes food into the small intestine. The small intestine is a very long, thinner tube. It's actually quite long. It's called small because it's thinner. And in the small intestine, more and more chemicals are going to be released. And this is going to help break down the food and then the food is finally going to be absorbed by the body. So the food is going to go from the small intestine into the blood. And now all these food chemicals are going to be floating around our body. So the small intestine breaks down food with chemicals. And then the really important thing, that's also important, and then the food is starting to be absorbed. Okay, next. So most of the food has now been absorbed, the food that our body can absorb. So now the leftover stuff is going to go into the large intestine. Now the large intestine isn't really going to absorb any more food, but it will absorb some more water. So the large intestine will absorb water and then store the waste until it's ready to be expelled. So the large intestine will absorb water. Well, I should have mentioned the small intestine also absorbs water, a great deal of water. So the large intestine will absorb water, and then it'll just hold those wastes until they're ready to be expelled. Now, I mentioned in our reading section that we also have these 3 other organs in our body that do things, called the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. The liver actually helps out with a lot of different things in our body, but for the digestive system, the liver makes this chemical called bile. So it makes bile. Now, bile is a chemical that helps break down fats, and the liver puts the bile into the gallbladder. So the gallbladder stores this bile chemical. So the gallbladder stores bile. Now, bile is released into the small intestine and helps break down fats, and it's what gives our excrement, our poo, I guess, that brownish color. So the bile is what causes that color. Okay, lastly, the pancreas also secretes, it does actually lots of things in the body, but it also secretes certain chemicals into the small intestine to help break down food. So it secretes chemicals into the small intestine, I'm going to write SI, to break down food. Okay, so there's our listening section. Now, over for the speaking section here, I got a picture of the human digestive tract, and it's actually crazy that it's 20 to 30 feet long. Imagine that if you spread all of this out from the mouth all the way down to the anus, it'd be 30 feet long. So I would like you now to discuss with someone the pathway food would travel and kind of follow it with your pencil here as you discuss it with someone where food would go in the body. So why don't you take a minute and try and talk about this so we can mention all these terms out loud. Okay, once you're done with that, I would like you to think about your favorite food. I'd like you to write that out in your first language for me again. And I'd like you to write 4 sentences that explain what happens to this food when we eat it. Using everything we've learned today. Okay, so there's our digestive system skill sheet, and I hope we're continuing to learn here. Have a great day, everyone.